Hi everyone, I'm Sophie, and today I will be discussing a part of lecture 2 with you about personality assessment and measurement. Now, when talking about personality assessment and measurement, there are two big concepts that we should talk about first. That of reliability and validity. Now, what is reliability? When we talk about reliability, we're actually referring to how precise our measurement is. So for example, I want to measure my height, and I do this multiple times, and every single time it should show 170 centimeters. If that is the case, the test is very reliable. There are a few ways we can test our reliability. The first one is through the test-retest reliability. For example, we have two moments of measurement, x1 and x2, and we want to see if there is a high correlation between the two moments. The second one would be that of internal consistency. So you have multiple items, and some of those items, for example, test depression. And so those items should correlate with each other, and with an internal consistency, they do correlate with each other. And then we have our inter-rater reliability, and this is when we are looking at an observational study. And here we want to see a high correlation between the observations from multiple observers. Next up is validity. So when we talk about validity, we actually refer to a person measuring what they actually want to measure. So for example, I want to measure my intelligence. If I do measure my intelligence, I do it with an IQ test. Hopefully that is a very valid test. And an invalid test would be, for example, measuring my length. It's very reliable, but it's not valid at all. Again, here we have a few ways of testing the validity. There are 5 different ways. So the first one is face validity. Here we look at the test and just see if at first glance it measures what it should measure. Then we have predictive validity. Here we want to see if the test can predict relevant behaviors or life outcomes. Then we can look at our convergent validity. So see if the test correlates with relevant constructs. For example, I have a test that measures depression. I just made it. And then I compare it, my outcome, with the outcome of the Beck's depression inventory test. And that should have a high correlation with each other. Then we have the opposite of that, which is discriminant validity. So you want the test to not correlate with another construct. So for example, depression and OCD. It will have some overlap, but you want to be able to distinguish between those two constructs. And then lastly, we have our construct validity. And here we look at if the test actually measures the intended construct. All right, validity and reliability done. So there are multiple types of testing. The first one is self-report. Then we have observational tests. Then we have projective testing. And then we have behavioral measurements. And through these tests, we actually want to look at latent properties and how they affect manifest behavior. And there are 2 types of testing. So we have humanistic and psychodynamic testing. Humanistic testing, we look at or we ask the person directly about certain behaviors or goals and themselves. And with psychodynamic testing, we actually want to look into the feelings and motives of a person, and these cannot be asked directly about. So we want to look at the underlying things. And then we also want to see that all of these tests are objective tests, meaning that the method of scoring the responses is an objective way of scoring those responses. We don't mean that the responses themselves should be objective. Those, most of the time, are quite subjective. All right. So each test has their advantages and disadvantages. And when we look at the advantages of the self-report test, we see that some things only you know about yourself. And also that it's quite quick and an inexpensive test to administer. However, there is a whole list of disadvantages. People may answer according to a certain response set instead of actually answering the question themselves. They can also use acquiescence, extreme response, or fence-sitting. Acquiescence meaning that they might be saying yes the whole time. Extreme response meaning that they could either say like extreme yes or extreme no. And then with fence-sitting, you see that people like to answer somewhere in the middle. Self-report tests are also not suitable for children or elderly, and especially not for babies, because they are not able to write or read or have problems with other cognitive abilities. People also often like to answer socially desirable, and people are able to fake their answers. However, we do have some solutions for this. The first one being the situational judgment test. So this test lets people choose based on a certain scenario. The pros is that it's hard to fake and it can help with introspection. However, it does take more time and money, and it's also quite hard to score. And then we also have our forced choice test. And in this test, the person has to choose one of the two statements that are equally socially desirable. So again, this one's also difficult to fake. However, this test does make it difficult to compare people. So when we're looking at an observational test, we see that we have two or more observers, and they'll be observing a certain situation, and they'll be evaluating that situation. Here we also have some advantages. So it can bypass the response set of the participants and social desirability. The more observers, the better. We'll have a higher inter-rater reliability, and they can provide information about how others see the participant or the situation. Also, here we have some disadvantages. So again, some things the participant only knows themselves, and be aware that the biases are not gone because the observer may have them too. So they can fake, or they can have a certain response that's themselves, or they can even have a poor relationship with the participant, which can affect the scores of the observer. So important to note that a combination of self-reporting and observations is what we're looking for. Next up are the projective tests. These are also called implicit tests. So the idea is that these tests, or with these tests, you're not able to fake anything. There are three types of tests. We have the implicit association test, the IRAT. Here we mainly focus on the reaction time of the participant. Then we have the Rorschach ink blot test. Here we focus on the interpretation of the ink blot of the participant. And then lastly, we have the thematic association test, or the TAT, where the participant has to interpret certain pictures. These tests are difficult to score and therefore have quite a low reliability and validity. Last tests are the behavioral measurements. So here we actually measure personality-related behaviors. And the pro is that people are often observed in a lab, which is a very controlled environment. We do have some issues. Well, namely, the lab settings are not natural settings. So we have a low ecological validity here. And we're also only looking at very specific behaviors. Also, behaviors are the only things that are examined directly, and feelings and thoughts are examined indirectly. And lastly, we of course have legal and ethical problems with observing people. So those are all the tests. We also have some test properties that we should look at. So these properties are important for any test to have. The first one is that of generalizability. So how well can I apply the results from this study to another population? The next one is that of norming and scaling. So we want to be able to standardize the scores so we can compare participants with each other. Then we have falsifiability. So how easily can the test be falsified or fabricated? Then we have that of efficiency. So how inexpensive is the test? Is it quick to apply? And then we have that of usability. So does the test have low demands of the subjects? And here we're talking about physical, cognitive, or mental strain. So for example, is the test an hour and a half long, or is it an entire day? You can imagine that an entire day can have quite a mental strain on a person. Thank you so much for your attention. If you want to learn more, and if you want some help with revising all the other chapters and lectures, please see me in the training. Have a nice day.